Part 6. What he finally allowed himself to feel. Daniel sat at the kitchen table long after the letter slipped from his hands. The sun had already fallen behind the pines, leaving the room washed in a soft amber haze. For years, this house had felt like a museum of everything he ran from, but now it felt like the only place where the truth could breathe. He pressed his palms against his eyes. For a moment, he just let himself feel it, the grief, the guilt, the relief, the strange softening he didn't recognize as forgiveness. Not yet, but something close. A faint creak came from the hallway. Daniel looked up. It was Mrs. Aldridge, the elderly neighbor who had been checking in since his return. She peered in through the open back door, holding a casserole dish like a peace offering she didn't need to explain. "I saw the light," she said gently. "Thought you might want some company, or at least food." Daniel managed a breath. "How did you know something was wrong?" She smiled, the kind only people who've lived long enough to understand pain can give. "Your porch light flickered. In this town, that means a heart is heavy." She set the dish down, then touched the envelope on the table, the one written by the father he couldn't forgive. "Did you read it?" she asked softly. Daniel nodded. "Yeah, I didn't expect it to hurt this much." "Hurt means you cared," she whispered, "and caring means you can heal." He swallowed hard. "I don't know if I'm ready." "You don't have to be. You just have to stop running." The room fell quiet. The wind outside brushed against the siding of the old house, almost like a sigh. Daniel glanced toward the window, where the porch light glowed steadily, cutting through the dark. A symbol he had once avoided. Now it felt like an invitation. He stood, pushed the door open, and stepped onto the porch. The cold night air bit at his skin, but the light above him hummed with a warmth that reached deeper than he expected. "This light," he murmured. He really never turned it off. Mrs. Aldridge stepped beside him. "No," he waited, "every day, until the end." Daniel's voice shook. "I don't know how to forgive him." "You don't start with forgiveness," she said. "You start with honesty." He closed his eyes, and for the first time he let himself say it quietly, barely audible. "I missed him." The words hit him harder than the letter. They cracked something open, something he'd kept locked for decades. When he looked back inside, the house no longer felt like a tomb of old memories. It felt awake, alive, waiting. Mrs. Aldridge squeezed his arm. "Rest tonight, Daniel. Tomorrow, you decide what to do with that letter." He nodded. As she walked home across the yard, Daniel stayed on the porch, staring at the light that had burned for him long before he believed he was worth waiting for. And for the first time in his adult life, he didn't turn away from it. He stepped closer, let it warm his face, let it soften the edges of a past that once felt unforgivable. And when he finally went back inside, closing the door gently behind him, Maple Hollow felt a little less lonely. Episode 6. The Porch Light Never Went Out. Finale. Part 1. The Decision He Didn't Know How to Make. The next morning rose with a quiet, pale blue light, washing softly over Maple Hollow. Daniel stood in the center of the living room, sleeves rolled up, the faint scent of lemon cleaner lingering in the air. The house looked different now. Not spotless, it was far too old for that, but settled, as if it finally breathed in harmony with him. He lifted another box, sealed it, and slid it next to the others stacked neatly against the wall. Days of sorting, cleaning, repairing, and now, finally, The final question pressed against his chest. What do I do with this place? Daniel walked slowly through the hallway, fingers brushing against the worn wallpaper. Every step carried a memory, some soft, some jagged. He paused at the doorway of his childhood bedroom. The old wooden floor groaned, familiar, almost welcoming. He exhaled. Selling the house would make sense. A clean break, a new start. No lingering ghosts, no reminders, no half-finished apologies from a time he could never get back. But as he walked down the stairs, he caught sight of the porch light glowing faintly through the window, the same light that had guided him through his own darkness, even when he wasn't ready to see it. He sat on the bottom step and let the morning quiet fill the space around him. Keeping the house meant staying connected to the people he'd spent a lifetime trying to forget, and a lifetime secretly wishing he could return to. It meant facing what he ran from. It meant accepting that love, messy, imperfect, painful, still lived inside these walls. Daniel rubbed his palms together, feeling the weight of the decision settle into his bones. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with you, he whispered into the empty room. Sell you, or finally come home to you. The house didn't answer, but the light on the porch flickered softly, almost like a breath. And for the first time since returning to Maple Hollow, Daniel allowed himself to consider keeping the one place that had never stopped waiting for him. Part 2. The box left on the porch. Daniel was wiping down the kitchen counter when he heard the soft creak of the porch steps, that familiar, wooden sigh that always announced someone's arrival long before a knock ever did. He opened the door and found Mrs. Alden standing there, bundled in a thick cardigan, her gray hair swept back neatly as always. In her hands was a small cardboard box, worn at the edges, tied with a thin piece of twine. I found this, she said, her voice gentle. Your mother asked me to hold on to it in case the time ever felt right. Daniel blinked, startled. For me? She nodded. She didn't want to push, but she wanted you to have these. Then, with a soft squeeze of his arm, she added, Your mother loved you, Daniel, even when she didn't know how to say it. Daniel swallowed hard. Thank you. Mrs. Alden offered a sad, warm smile, then stepped off the porch and made her way home. The autumn wind rustled through the trees as Daniel stood there, the weight of the small box unexpectedly heavy in his hands. He carried it inside, setting it on the kitchen table. For a long moment he just stared at it, fingertips resting on the lid, afraid to open it, afraid of what he might feel, or remember, or regret. Finally, he slid the twine free and lifted the top. Inside, neatly arranged, were unopened letters, dozens of them, all addressed to him in his mother's looping handwriting. Some were old, yellowed and thin. Others were newer, still crisp, with dates from the last few years marked quietly in the corner. Daniel's breath caught. She had written to him, not once, not occasionally, but again and again and again, even when he never wrote back, even when he didn't call, even when he disappeared. He touched the first envelope, his thumb brushing lightly against the ink of his name. For a moment he closed his eyes. The house around him felt suddenly full, not of ghosts, but of all the words she had tried to give him but never could. As he reached for the first letter, Daniel felt something shift deep inside his chest, something equal parts aching and hopeful. Whatever lay inside those envelopes, it was time to finally hear her. Part 3. If Alex Ever Comes Home. Daniel sits at the kitchen table with the first unopened letter in his hands. The house is quiet enough that he can hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the soft rustle of the curtains each time the wind slides past the windows. He hesitates not because he's afraid of what's inside, but because opening it feels like opening a door to a version of his mother he never let himself see. He finally unfolds the thin paper. Her handwriting hits him first. A little shaky, but unmistakably hers. The kind of handwriting that used to label his lunch boxes, sign permission slips, and leave reminders on the fridge. He begins to read. "Danny, if Alex ever comes home, turn the porch light on for him, just like I did for you." Daniel stops, breath caught halfway between a breath and a memory. He reads the next lines. "I know you think you failed him. I know you think you failed me, too. But mothers see differently. We see the child behind the man, and the heart behind the mistakes. You always came home, even when it took you years, and I loved you every time." He presses his palm over the words, as if warmth could pass through paper. Another wave of guilt rises heavy, familiar, but this time, something else mixes with it. Understanding. She wasn't asking him to fix the past. She wasn't asking him to be perfect. She was asking him to keep a light on, to offer the same chance she had offered him again and again. A way home. Daniel closes the letter slowly, holding it like something fragile, something sacred. Then he whispers into the empty room, "Mom, I'll do it. I promise." He stands, walks toward the porch door, and looks at the old fixture. From inside the house, it feels like a small sun waiting to be lit. And for the first time, Daniel knows why it mattered so much to her. It wasn't just a light. It was a message, a hope, a promise that the door was never closed. And now, it's his turn to carry it.